Chapter 1. The Breath of Morning. The first light came softly over the valley, like the slow opening of an eye. Mist drifted from the river, curling above the reeds and stones, wrapping the world in quiet silver. Aru stirred beside the dying fire, feeling the cool air on his skin, sharp, clean, full of the scent of damp earth and pine. He did not rise at once. He listened first. The forest spoke in murmurs, water over pebbles, the sigh of leaves, the distant call of cranes waking by the lakeshore. These sounds had always comforted him more than the voices of his own tribe. Sina was already awake, crouched near the water's edge, her hands deep in the stream. She was washing the smooth stones she collected the day before, white stones with tiny lines that reminded her of rivers seen from high cliffs. "Morning comes gently," she said without turning. Aru smiled. Her voice was soft, like wind through dry grass. He walked to her side, his bare feet silent on the moss. "The cold is leaving us," he said. "I can feel it in the air." She nodded. "Soon the trees will open again." Behind them the camp began to stir, a child's laugh, a spark of flint, a low hum from the elder's tent. Smoke rose, thin and blue, carrying the scent of cedar wood. Aru looked to the distant hills, where ice still shone under the sun. "When the snow melts completely," he whispered, "we will travel north again." Sina glanced at him, her dark eyes reflecting the pale sky, "and find a place where the land still dreams." He said nothing, but his heart was full, not of words, but of the quiet, endless song of the earth waking beneath them. Chapter 2. The Gathering Wind. By midday the valley had changed its color. The silver of morning mist gave way to warm gold, sunlight weaving through the tall grass, painting every leaf in trembling light. Sina moved slowly through the meadow, her basket resting against her hip. She picked wild roots and small purple flowers that only opened when the air was cool. Each one she touched carefully, whispering a word of thanks, an old habit taught by her grandmother. Aru followed a little distance behind, carrying a wooden spear, not for hunting but for balance as he crossed the uneven ground. He watched the wind move through the grass, a soft ocean made of green. Sometimes he wondered if the wind remembered all it had touched, the mountains, the sea, the faces of those who had come before. He stopped by a fallen tree, half covered in moss. The wood was ancient and hollow, and when the breeze passed through, it hummed like a flute. Aru knelt beside it, closed his eyes, and listened. Behind him, Senna's voice came gently, "You hear them again, don't you?" He opened one eye. "Hear who?" "The ones who came before us." Aru smiled, but did not answer. In truth, he did hear something, not voices exactly, but memories hidden in sound. The way wind echoed through stone, or how fire cracked when night was deep and quiet. It was the world speaking to itself, and he liked to think he could understand a little of what it said. Far across the field, the tribe was busy preparing for the evening. Children carried dry branches. Women cleaned fish caught at dawn. The elder Tor sat near the fire pit, carving a piece of bone into a flute. His hands were slow, patient, as if shaping time itself. When Aru and Sina returned, the air was cooler again. The sun dipped behind the hills, and shadows grew long. Tor raised his head as they approached. "You both walk like the wind," he said, his old eyes kind, "quiet, but full of meaning." Sina placed her basket beside him. "The earth is generous today," she said. Tor smiled. "The earth always gives. It is people who forget how to see the gift." Night settled gently. The tribe gathered around the fire, and Tor began to play the bone flute. The sound was low and round, echoing softly through the trees. Aru lay back, watching stars appear one by one, pale fires scattered across the dark. He felt the warmth of the flames on his face, the cool breath of the nights on his hands, and the slow rhythm of the flute weaving them together. It was a small moment, nothing grand, nothing strange, but in that stillness, it felt as if the whole world was breathing with them. Chapter 3. Voices in the River. Before the first light touched the hills, Aru was already awake. The camp still slept, small shapes under fur blankets, the faint smell of ash rising from the embers. Above him, the sky was deep and silent, a dark blue ocean waiting for dawn. He rose quietly and walked toward the river. His breath made soft clouds in the cold air. Each step stirred the dew-covered grass, making it shimmer like tiny stars. When he reached the water, the world seemed to hold its breath. The river moved slow and glassy, carrying the first reflections of the sky. He crouched beside it, dipping his hands into the flow. The chill ran through him, waking every sense. Behind him, a gentle voice. "You always walk to the river before sunrise." It was Sina. Her hair was tied with thin vines, still wet from sleep. Aru smiled faintly. "The river knows things," he said. Sina knelt beside him, her fingers tracing the ripples. "Like what?" He paused, listening to the soft rush of water between stones. "It remembers. Every drop has been somewhere else. Mountain, cloud, rain. The river carries the stories of the sky." For a while they sat in silence. The eastern edge of the world began to glow, pale pink at first, then gold. Mist rose from the surface of the water, curling around their shoulders like something alive. Sina leaned forward and pointed. "Look!" A few fish moved beneath the surface, slow and bright, their scales catching the new light like fragments of the sun. "They're returning," she whispered. "My grandmother said when the fish come back to the river, the earth forgives the cold." Aru nodded. Then spring is truly here. From somewhere in the forest, a crane called, long, mournful, and beautiful. Its wings beat the air above them as it flew across the dawn sky, a white streak against gold. They both watched in silence, their faces soft in the light. When they returned to the camp, Tor was already waiting by the fire. He looked at them, smiling as if he knew where they had been. "The river speaks early to those who listen," he said. Senna tilted her head. "Do you believe it truly speaks?" Tor's eyes gleamed. "Everything that moves has a voice, child. We are the ones who forget how to hear." As the tribe awoke, the day began again, slow, simple, and alive with the sounds of a world learning to breathe after winter. Chapter 4. The Memory of Fire. Night settled slowly over the valley, soft as fur. The sky deepened from gold to violet, and then to a quiet, endless black. Stars gathered like scattered seeds, shining through the thin smoke that rose from the camp's fire. Aru sat cross-legged beside the flames. The warmth licked his face. The smell of burning pine filled the air, and the sound of crackling wood felt like an old heartbeat. Around the circle, others joined, hunters, gatherers, children curling against their mothers' sides. Sina sat opposite him, her eyes catching the light like dark rivers. In the center, Tor, the elder, leaned forward and fed the fire with another piece of wood. Sparks rose and vanished into the night. When all was still, he spoke. "Before we lived by this river," Tor began, "our people walked the edge of the ice. The world was different then, harder, colder. The wind spoke in teeth, and the ground groaned under the weight of frost. The fire popped. Shadows trembled on their faces. Tor's voice was deep but calm, shaped by years of listening more than speaking. "One night, long ago, a young woman from our tribe became lost in the snow. For 3 days she walked. On the third night, she fell beneath a tree, certain she would not wake again." Senna leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "What happened to her?" Tor smiled softly, his eyes distant. "The fire found her. Not from men's hands, from the sky itself. A storm came, and lightning struck the tree. The flames warmed her, fed her, and showed her that the world itself could be alive. She carried that fire back to her people, wrapped in stone and ash. And so we learned that warmth could be born from light." The children's eyes widened. The flames swayed, as if remembering. Aru watched the sparks lift and vanish into the dark. He felt something stir inside him. Not fear, not longing, but a quiet recognition, as if he too had once walked through cold and been guided home by fire. Tor looked around the circle. "We keep the fire not only for warmth," he said. "We keep it so we do not forget. Fire is the memory of the sun. It reminds us that even in the darkest night, the day is still alive somewhere." No one spoke for a long time after that. Only the fire answered. A soft crack, a sigh, a dance of light across faces both young and old. Later, as the others drifted to sleep, Aru and Senna remained by the embers. The stars shimmered above them, endless and cold. Aru whispered, "Do you think the world remembers us too, the way we remember it?" Senna smiled faintly, her eyes half closed. "Maybe, but I think it remembers our silence more than our words." The fire gave one last breath of light before sinking into red coals. And for a while, the night was so still that even time seemed to rest. Chapter 5. The Path of Shadows. The night was deep, and the world seemed to float in silence. The fire had faded to faint red whispers beneath the ash. Aru lay beneath the open sky, wrapped in fur, eyes heavy but mind awake. He watched the stars flicker and shift above him. Sometimes he thought they moved, just slightly, like glowing eyes watching from the edges of the dark. Sleep came quietly, like mist rolling over the hills, and with it came the dream. He stood on the same riverbank, but the world was different. The trees glowed faintly from within, their trunks breathing like living lungs. The water shimmered, not with moonlight, but with a strange golden light that seemed to come from below the surface. He saw footsteps ahead, his own, and yet not his own. They led into the forest, where shadows moved but made no sound. The air smelled of smoke and rain. A figure appeared between the trees. It was tall, wrapped in furs, the face hidden by a mask of carved bone. The eyes behind it glowed softly, like embers. Aru felt no fear, Only a strange calm. He stepped closer and whispered, "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head. Its voice was the wind, gentle, distant. "I am the one who walked before you. Every stone you touch has felt my hand. Every breath you take has been taken before. You are not the first echo in this valley." Aru felt the ground beneath him hum, a low, endless vibration, like the heartbeat of the earth. The trees swayed, though no wind blew. The river's voice grew louder, rushing like 1,000 whispers. The masked figure pointed toward the mountains. "There is a path there," it said, "where the shadows move with the light. When you find it, you will understand that all things are one breath, the fire, the water, the wind, and you." Then the world cracked open into sound, the roar of waterfalls, the cry of birds, the hiss of fire, and he woke.
Dawn had come. The sun was breaking over the hills, gold spilling across the valley. For a moment, Aru could still hear the echoes of the dream, fading like distant thunder. Sena was sitting beside him, feeding the morning fire. She looked at him with quiet curiosity. "You dreamed," she said softly. "I could tell." He nodded, still half in another world. "Someone spoke to me." "Someone older than the world," Sena smiled faintly. "Then the earth has chosen to speak through you. You should listen carefully. It rarely repeats itself." The wind moved through the camp, gentle and cool. Aru looked toward the distant mountains, where the mist still clung to the stone. He did not know why, but he felt the call, faint but steady, like a heartbeat beneath his own. Chapter 6. The Mountains Remember. The morning began with stillness. Mist hung low over the valley, silver and cool, wrapping every tree and stone in silence. The tribe was awake now, but the day moved softly. Children carrying baskets, smoke rising from small fires, voices low and slow like the rhythm of the earth itself. Aru stood at the edge of the camp, his spear resting lightly in his hand. He looked toward the north, where the mountains rose, tall and blue, their peaks hidden in clouds. Tor approached him quietly. "You've been watching the mountains since the sun rose," the elder said, his tone kind but knowing. Aru nodded. "I dreamed of them." "Something waits there?" "I don't know what." Tor studied him for a long moment. "The mountains remember all things," he said finally, "but they do not speak easily. If you go, go with respect. The stones will test you before they show you what you seek." Sena appeared behind them, her basket slung over one shoulder. "You're leaving," she said, not as a question, but as truth. Aru hesitated. "Only for a short while." "I need to understand what the dream meant." Sena's eyes softened. "Then take this." She handed him a small pouch made from deer hide. Inside were dried berries, a smooth river stone, and a few herbs wrapped in leaf. "For when you feel the world grow too quiet," she said. He smiled, touched but silent. When he turned to leave, Tor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Listen to the wind," the old man said. "It carries the memory of paths long gone. It will guide you if you let it." Aru nodded, then began to walk. The path grew narrow as he climbed. The air thinned, cool and sharp. Every step carried the sound of crunching soil, loose pebbles sliding away, and far below, the soft hum of the river. As the day passed, the forest gave way to stone, jagged cliffs and moss-covered boulders glowing faintly in the afternoon sun. Birds circled high above, their cries echoing against the rock faces like forgotten words. When he stopped to rest, he pressed his hand against a smooth slab of granite. The stone was warm, as if it breathed. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Do you remember me?" For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then, faintly, the wind shifted, a low sigh rolling across the slope, rustling the dry grass around him. Aru thought he heard something beneath it, not words, but rhythm. The slow pulse of the earth, steady and ancient. He followed that sound higher, until the world below disappeared into a sea of mist. The sun slid behind the clouds, turning everything to soft gray. By twilight, he reached a narrow ridge where the wind howled like a living thing. There, he built a small fire from dry twigs and flint, just as Tor had taught him. The flame flickered weakly against the cold, but its light seemed to breathe in time with his heart. As he sat beside it, looking down into the endless valley of mist, he felt something deep within him, a quiet connection, like a thread stretching backward through time. He realized then that the mountains did not need to speak with words. Their silence was older than sound, and in that silence he could hear everything. Chapter 7. The Echo of Stone. The sun had long disappeared behind the peaks. Aru's fire burned low, its light trembling against the rocks. Above him, the stars spread like dust, countless, cold, eternal. When morning came, it came pale and slow. Mist moved like breath between the cliffs, curling through the cracks and hollows. Aru packed his things, the small pouch from Senna, his stone blade, and a strip of dried meat, and began to climb higher. The path was steep and narrow, the stones slick with dew. Each step echoed softly, the sound swallowed almost at once by the great stillness around him. Here, even the wind spoke in whispers. Hours passed before he saw it, a dark shape at the base of a cliff, half hidden by vines and moss, a hollow in the mountain, deep and shadowed. Aru felt something stir inside him, a quiet recognition, as if his dream had been leading him here all along. He approached carefully. The air near the entrance was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and thyme. He lit a small torch and stepped inside. The light from his flame revealed a chamber of echoes. The walls glimmered faintly, streaked with old soot and mineral lines. And then he saw them, shapes, drawn in red and black pigment. Hands, dozens of them, some small, some broad, pressed against the rock as if to say we were here. He moved closer, heart pounding softly. There were figures, too, hunters, rivers, animals painted in graceful lines, half faded by centuries. Aru traced one of the drawings gently with his fingertips. The stone was cold, but something in it felt alive. As he knelt, the torchlight flickered, and in its wavering glow for a heartbeat, he thought he saw movement. The painted hunters seemed to shift. The deer began to run. The walls breathed. A low sound rolled through the chamber, not from outside, but from within the rock itself. Aru froze, listening. It was like a song with no words, just tone and rhythm. The sound of stone remembering. He closed his eyes. Images came. Faces he had never seen but somehow knew, hands shaping fire, children laughing by the same river he once walked. He saw Sena gathering roots in the sunlight, Tor carving his flute, and behind them countless others who had done the same since the first dawn. When he opened his eyes again, the cave was still. Only the torch burned quietly, its smoke curling toward the ceiling. He whispered into the silence, "You remember us." And though no voice answered, he knew it was true. The mountains remembered everything, every birth, every song, every small fire in the night. When he finally stepped outside, the sun was low again, painting the mist gold. He stood there a long time, the wind lifting his hair, carrying the scent of pine and stone. He felt lighter, as if something old had been placed gently back where it belonged. Far below, in the valley, a thin line of smoke rose, the campfire of his tribe. He smiled. He would return soon, but now he understood they were not just living in the land, they were part of its memory. Chapter 8. The Returning Path. The morning light touched the peaks first, a soft gold spilling across the cliffs, melting the night's cold breath. Aru stood at the cave's mouth, his torch long extinguished. He felt the warmth of the sun reach his skin and knew it was time to return. He began to descend slowly, following the same narrow path that had once felt endless. Now, each step was easier, lighter. The stones no longer felt sharp beneath his feet. They felt familiar, almost welcoming. The wind moved gently around him, carrying whispers through the air. Sometimes it sounded like voices, low and rhythmic, words too old to understand, but Aru didn't need to know their meaning. He felt it, deep, steady, kind. Halfway down the slope, he stopped to rest by a large boulder streaked with lichen. He pressed his hand against it, and the stone seemed to hum faintly under his touch. He smiled. "You remember me too?" he murmured. The forest opened below him, tall pines swaying, birds gliding through the light. He began to walk again, slow and steady. Every detail felt alive. The crisp scent of pine needles, the crunch of soil, the distant call of cranes returning to the river. Hours passed, but he didn't notice. Time had thinned here, blending day into day, breath into breath. When the first sounds of the valley reached him, children's laughter, the faint ring of stone tools, his heart warmed. He could see the faint line of smoke rising from the camp. Home. By dusk, he stood at the edge of the settlement. The tribe had already lit the evening fires. Sena saw him first. She dropped the bundle of herbs she carried and ran toward him, her feet barely touching the earth. "You came back," she said, breathless but smiling. "I did," Aru said softly, and the mountain spoke. Tor approached slowly, leaning on his walking stick. "And what did they tell you, child?" Aru looked toward the hills behind him. "They told me that nothing is ever lost, that every fire, every step, every word, it stays. The land keeps it even when we forget." Tor nodded, his eyes shining with quiet pride. "Then you have learned the first truth." The tribe gathered around as night fell. Sena placed her hand over Aru's. "Do you still hear them, the ones who came before?" He smiled. "Always, but now their voices sound like the wind." The stars came out again, scattered and endless. The fire crackled, soft and warm, its light dancing across their faces. And in the quiet between their breaths, Aru could feel it, the steady rhythm that had always been here, the song of stone and water and fire and sky, the song of life, remembering itself. Chapter 9. The Feast of Embers. The night was alive. The valley shimmered with the glow of many fires, small circles of light breathing softly under the stars. The tribe gathered in laughter and song, their faces painted with ash and clay, their voices rising and falling like wind over tall grass. Aru sat near the largest fire, the warmth soaking into his skin. He had never seen the camp so alive. Children danced in wide circles, their feet stirring the dust into a golden mist. The smell of roasted roots and herbs filled the air, mingling with the scent of burning cedar. Sena moved gracefully among the people, carrying bowls of food, her hair glinting in the firelight. When she passed by Aru, she smiled and set a bowl beside him. Berries, mixed with wild honey. "You should eat," she said. "You've walked farther than any of us." Aru nodded, his eyes reflecting the flames. "It feels strange to be still again." Tor's flute began to play, a slow, winding melody that wove through the laughter and voices. The sound was soft but full, rising like smoke, curling into the night. Aru closed his eyes for a moment. The rhythm of the flute matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. Every sound, the crackle of fire, the murmur of the river beyond, the rustle of leaves in the dark, came together like a single song. Later, when the food was gone and the laughter had quieted, Tor stood. His eyes shone in the firelight as he raised his hands for silence. "Tonight," he said, his voice carrying gently through the air, "we honor what lives and what remembers. The fire, the earth, the water, all that holds our stories." He turned to Aru. "You have walked where few dare to walk. Tell us, child, what the mountain said." The tribe fell silent. Even the night seemed to listen. Aru hesitated, searching for words that could hold what he had seen, what he had felt. "The mountains, they do not speak like we do," he said slowly. "Their voices are in the wind, in the stones, in the silence between breaths. They remember everything, and they remind us that we are a part of their remembering." Tor nodded. "And what did you learn from their silence?" Aru looked into the fire, watching a spark rise and vanish into the stars. "That even silence can be full," he said softly, "and that the world is never truly quiet, only listening." A murmur spread through the people, quiet, thoughtful. Then Santa began to hum, a low melody that blended with the flute. One by one, others joined in. No words, only sound, soft and ancient. The song swayed like flame, like breath, like time itself. Even the forest seemed to hum along, the leaves trembling gently under the night wind. When the music faded, Tor spoke again, barely above a whisper. "The fire remembers us tonight." And as they sat together, faces warm, hearts calm, the stars watching from above, it was as if the world itself had leaned closer to listen. Chapter 10. Under the Same Stars. The fires of the feast had dimmed to soft embers. Laughter and voices had faded, leaving the valley wrapped in quiet. Aru stepped away from the camp, barefoot, feeling the cool grass beneath him. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and distant stone. Above him, the stars gleamed like scattered sparks, pale and steady, uncountable, eternal. He walked slowly, each step measured, mindful of the earth beneath his feet. The night was deep, yet gentle, cradling him in its calm. Every sound, the faint rustle of leaves, the distant rush of the river, the soft calls of night birds, was a thread in the world's quiet song. Aru stopped near the edge of the forest, looking up. The stars stretched endlessly, a silver ocean above. He whispered to the night, "I feel you. I hear you." A soft wind stirred around him, brushing through his hair, lifting the fur of his cloak. It was as if the air itself was listening, responding with gentle sighs. He thought of the mountains, of the cave, of the painted stones. He remembered the dreams, the voices, the quiet wisdom of Tor and the songs of the tribe. Everything was connected, river, stone, fire, sky, and the soft rhythm of his own heart. Sina's voice broke the silence, just a whisper carried by the wind. "You are not alone," she said, though she was far behind. Aru smiled, closing his eyes. He could feel her presence, the presence of the tribe, the presence of all who had walked this land before. And he understood that even in stillness there was life, movement, and memory. He sat on a smooth rock, letting the stars soak into him, letting the night hold him like a gentle hand. Time felt slow, endless, suspended. The world was alive, patient, and full of quiet songs waiting to be heard. Eventually, he lay back, letting the grass and stone support him. The stars whispered softly above. The wind sang low and gentle. Aru breathed in rhythm with the night, feeling the heartbeat of the world align with his own. And for the first time, he felt completely at home. Chapter 11. The River's Gift. Dawn arrived slowly, stretching pale fingers across the valley. The river glimmered in the morning light, soft and silver, carrying the whisper of distant hills. Aru and Sena walked quietly along its edge, bare feet brushing against cool stones. The water murmured secrets as it moved, spilling over pebbles and under fallen branches. Aru knelt, cupping a handful of the stream. He watched it trickle through his fingers, each drop catching the sun like tiny sparks of fire. Sena reached down, her hand hovering above the water. "It feels alive," she whispered. Aru nodded. "It carries everything, the mountains, the rain, even the sky." They moved together, careful not to disturb the small creatures living in the riverbank moss. A dragonfly skimmed the surface, its wings catching light like thin threads of glass. A fish leapt briefly, then disappeared beneath the ripples. Aru smiled at the small miracle, savoring its quiet perfection. Sena plucked a small root from the riverbank, turning it in her hands. "This will taste sweet in the morning fire," she said, "and the bees will know it too, long before we do." Aru watched her, noticing how she moved as if the world itself guided her, each step, each gesture in harmony with everything around her. He felt a deep calm settle in his chest, a rhythm in tune with the river and wind. A soft breeze carried the scent of pine and damp earth. It whispered across their faces, a gentle reminder of the long night, the mountains, and the stars still fading behind the hills. They walked on, following the river's bend. At one curve, a small pool had formed. Water as clear as glass reflected the sky above and the surrounding trees. Aru knelt again, tracing patterns on the water with his fingers. The ripples carried light, bending and scattering it like tiny lanterns floating in the river. Sena sat beside him. "The river gives us gifts we can barely see," she said softly. He nodded, feeling the truth in her words. "Gifts of life," he whispered, "and reminders that we are part of it all." They stayed there for a long time, listening to the gentle murmur of water and the distant call of birds. Every breath, every ripple, every whisper of wind felt sacred. The world seemed to hold its breath with them, patient and infinite. Chapter 12. Stones and Shadows. The sun hung warm in the sky, casting long, soft shadows across the valley. Aru, Sena, and a few children wandered along a quiet path, following the river's curve. The grass brushed against their legs, and wild flowers nodded gently in the breeze. Ahead, a cluster of stones caught Aru's eye, smooth and rounded, arranged in a pattern that seemed intentional. He knelt, tracing the edges with his fingers. "They're not random," he said softly. "Someone placed theirs here long ago." Sena knelt beside him, her dark eyes wide. "Maybe our ancestors," she whispered, "or travelers from far away." A child pointed to a shadow falling across the stones. "It moves," the little one said, eyes wide with awe. Aru smiled gently. "It's just the sun and the wind," he said. "But the shadow is part of the story too," Sena added. They explored further, discovering more stones, some stacked carefully, others scattered like forgotten gifts. Among them, Aru noticed faint markings, grooves that told stories too old for words. He pressed his palm to the rock. The stone was cool, solid, and seemed to hum faintly beneath his touch. Sena collected small fragments of clay and smooth pebbles. "Even these pieces," she said, "hold memory. The earth keeps everything we leave behind." The children laughed, picking up twigs and stones, arranging them in their own patterns. The air was filled with quiet voices, the rhythm of small feet, the gentle rustle of leaves. Aru stood and looked at the valley around them. The mountains rose in soft blue waves, the river glimmered below, and the wind carried the sound of birds and water. He felt a deep connection. The living world, the stones, the shadows, and all the invisible threads linking them together. Sena joined him, her hand brushing his. "We are part of this," she said softly, "just as those who came before were." Aru nodded, watching the sunlight dance across the stones. The valley seemed to hold its breath with them, patient, quiet, and full of stories waiting to be remembered. Chapter 13. Evening Whispers. The sun began to dip behind the mountains, spilling soft gold across the valley. Shadows stretched long, curling around stones and trees, and the air carried the faint, cool scent of evening dew. Aru and Sena walked side by side, their footsteps quiet on the winding path. The children they had explored with earlier had returned to the camp, leaving only the soft sound of wind through the grass to accompany them. The river murmured below, silver and calm. Aru knelt at its edge, letting the water brush against his fingers. "The river always whispers," he said softly. Sena nodded, kneeling beside him. "It tells us stories, if we listen carefully." The wind stirred, weaving through the trees like a gentle song. Leaves rustled, carrying distant scents of pine and earth, of hidden flowers and moss. Every sound was soft, deliberate, as if the world itself was breathing slowly, teaching them patience and stillness. Aru stood and stretched, feeling the cool air brush across his face. "Even the shadows speak," he whispered, watching them stretch and shrink with the fading sun. Sena smiled. "They remind us of time, of the day passing, and that night is near." As twilight deepened, the first stars appeared, pale points of light in the softening sky. The mountains were dark silhouettes against fading gold. Aru breathed deeply, feeling the rhythm of the valley, the river, the wind, the rustle of leaves, all pulsing quietly in harmony. They continued walking, following the path that led back to the camp. Every step was measured, each moment held in the calm of evening. The valley seemed to sigh, welcoming them home. By the time they returned, the fires of the evening were burning low, casting gentle orange light across familiar faces. The tribe had begun to settle, their voices soft, echoing the quiet of the night outside the circle of light. Aru looked at Sena. "Do you think the world always waits like this for us?" She shook her head gently. "Not always. But if we listen, it will speak." And as they sat together by the fire, the shadows stretching and merging into night, they felt the world's patience, its quiet presence, and the gentle whisper of life flowing all around them.